Nice to know, Raymond, that you were in Nigeria when I was. I was in Nigeria from 68 to 71. But before that, I was a CUSO volunteer in Sierra Leone, and by chance I was posted to Koidu, town in Kono district, where diamonds are mined. And I got to see at first hand, when I was teaching school there, the chaos that goes on around artisanal alluvial diamond digging. I didn't get into the diamond thing for quite a number of years later. What I want to talk to you about, though, is diamonds as a cautionary tale in terms of this issue that we're dealing with, illicit flows. This is a real-life example of an attempt to control illicit flows, which looks pretty good on the surface, but which has some real problems. A couple of things you need to know about diamonds. Diamonds are all formed the same way. Volcanic action brings them up from the Earth's mantle. Below the Earth's mantle, you get the right combination of heat and rock and pressure, and you get a volcanic explosion. And these things are called kimberlite pipes. If you can find a pipe that's intact, that hasn't eroded, then you can dig straight down into a carrot-like chasm, haul up the gravel, sort out the diamonds, and get rich. This is an expensive process, very capital intensive. The Akati mine in Northwest Territories cost $480 million to get started. It was paid off in 18 months, so it's a pretty good business. But what's happened in some countries over 100 million years is that the tops of these kimberlite pipes have washed away. The diamonds have eroded down rivers and streams. They've become alluvial diamonds. And they're scattered over hundreds of square miles. They're often very easy to dig. They're close to the surface. All you really need is a shovel and a sieve and a strong back. There are 15 countries in Africa where you have alluvial diamonds. And these are the places where you had the most trouble during the 1990s and into the 2000s with conflict diamonds or blood diamonds. Of course, with the end of the Cold War, rebel armies lost their patrons. The Soviet Union or the United States or its proxies were no longer available, so they began to look for other ways to finance themselves. Diamonds were one of the first. Charles Taylor in Liberia used timber, but when he saw diamonds next door in Sierra Leone, he began turning his attention there. In Angola, UNITA fueled its war with diamonds. I think something like 500,000 people died in the war that UNITA fought, buying its weapons with diamonds. From direct causes or indirect causes, diamonds and other minerals resulted in the deaths of 5 to 6 million people in Democratic Republic of the Congo, tens of thousands in Liberia and Sierra Leone and Cote d'Ivoire and other countries died as a result of these conflicts. I came back to this by accident in 1998. A number of us who'd been in Sierra Leone, or Sierra Leoneans here in Canada, began to look at this thing and try to figure out what was going on. It didn't occur to me that it was diamonds. One of the Sierra Leoneans in our group said, this is about the diamonds, and until somebody does something about that, this war, which by then had gone on twice as long as the Second World War, had displaced half the population of Sierra Leone, wrecked most of the infrastructure. He said, until somebody does something about the diamonds, this will never be over. So a group of us started to study the issue. We did this under the auspices of an Ottawa-based NGO called Partnership Africa Canada. We discovered that the problem was not limited to Sierra Leone. We discovered the Angola problem. Global Witness, a British NGO, had done some research on Angola. And then we saw what was going on in the Congo and elsewhere. I don't want to talk about the campaign. I want to cut to the chase. But there was a 3-year campaign in which NGOs, a coalition grew. It got bigger and bigger and made quite a lot of racket. There was support from the UN. The UN Security Council did a study on Angola, and then I was appointed to the panel that did the study on Sierra Leone. So we had Security Council corroboration for what the NGOs were saying about diamonds. Diamonds were completely unregulated. I think something like 25% of the diamond business in the mid-90s was crooked in one way or another. This is a pretty serious accusation. If you were in the refrigerator business and 25% of the refrigerators in the world were in some way crooked, you'd be worried. For some reason, the diamond industry wasn't or didn't know what to do about it. And by crooked, or illicit, which is a nicer word for crooked, I mean tax evasion. I don't mean tax avoidance. I mean tax evasion. I mean gun running. I mean drug running and money laundering. Very serious, heavy-duty money laundering. Between 1994 and 1998, $2 billion worth of rough diamonds came into Antwerp from Liberia as Liberian diamonds. $2 billion worth of diamonds. This is a country that can't produce more than $10 million a year worth of very low-quality diamonds. Everybody in the diamond industry knows that. There's no secret about this. This was open source information. It was stuff you could get off the internet. Anybody could find it, and yet nobody was saying a thing about it. The industry was so crooked and so I mean, this was a normal way of behaving that they didn't even bother to hide it. So those $2 billion worth of diamonds, what were they? Well, a lot of them were coming from Sierra Leone. The Revolutionary United Front was taking the diamonds to Charles Taylor for weapons, helping to pay for his own rampage to power. Some of them were probably coming from Angola. Some of them were probably coming from Russia. They were coming from all sorts of illicit sources as ways of laundering money and hiding the source of these goods. When the NGO campaign got noisy enough, and of course there were other reasons, it wasn't just a noisy NGO campaign, there was a huge humanitarian problem, obvious. There were commercial interests because diamonds, gem diamonds, are only good for one thing, and they're sold on the basis of love and fidelity and beauty and all of those good things. A diamond is forever. It doesn't do to have people with their hands cut off in diamond wars. It doesn't do to hear about all the numbers of people who were killed and so on. So there were commercial interests, and there were also strategic and security interests. The cost of the peacekeeping efforts in Sierra Leone and elsewhere was enormous. And of course, it's the wealthy countries who put up most of the money for that. So there were a variety of reasons to come together and try and do something about this. The government of South Africa called a meeting to bring together NGOs and industry and governments that were concerned about this. The first meeting was held in the town of Kimberley in South Africa, very close to where the first South African diamonds were discovered in the 1860s. That one meeting led to a series of meetings to talk about how diamonds could be regulated, and that's why it came to be known as the Kimberley process. There were about a dozen meetings. First one was in May 2000. By the end of 2002, we had an agreement. Some 70 governments, including 28 covered by the European Union, agreed to something that's called the Kimberley Process Certification Scheme. So this is where you need to think a little bit about what might go into these post-MDG ideas on regulating illicit flows, because we did it. It was quite an achievement. The Kimberley process, the idea is quite simple. There's no treaty. It's voluntary. The UN was not involved. It was basically done by the NGOs and the governments and the business people who gathered at these meetings. But it was voluntary in the sense that it was going to be something that governments joined. So NGOs and industry would be observers. They had participated in all the negotiations, and they would continue to participate in the discussions and the monitoring and all the rest of it. But to be a member of the Kimberley process, you had to do this as a government. And if you were going to be a member, it was voluntary, but if you were going to be a member, you had to meet Kimberley process minimum standards. And minimum standards meant that you had to pass legislation saying that your government would abide by all of the conditions of the Kimberley process. That meant that you had to be able to have an auditable trail for the diamonds that were being exported from your country. You had to be able to audit the trail right back to the point where the diamonds were being mined, or in the case of diamonds that were being re-exported from a country like Belgium, You had to be able to track them back to the point of import. So there had to be an audit trail. You had to agree, if you were a member of the Kimberley process, that you would not allow any diamonds to be shipped from your country to any country that was not a member of the Kimberley process. So only members of the Kimberley process could receive diamonds from you if you're in. And you would not receive any diamonds from any country that was not in the Kimberley process. So Uganda is not a member of the Kimberley process. If a Ugandan arrives in Canada with diamonds, even though he has an export license from Uganda, even though he owns them legally and can demonstrate that he owns them legally, if he tries to bring them into Canada, they will be seized and he will lose them and he will face possible prison sentence. That required WTO agreement. I'm going to tell you something. I see the five-minute rule is going to hold up a 2-minute one soon. When regulators fail to regulate, I noticed in the last session that you didn't hold people to it. And what I've discovered in diamonds, when regulators fail to regulate, then you get into trouble. Now I've lost my train of thought. So in a sense, it was voluntary, but it was not voluntary. George Bush, when he became president of the United States, was starting to pull the United States out of a lot of multilateral agreements, and he certainly didn't want to join the Kimberley process. This seemed very loosey-goosey, and what is it, and why should we join this thing? The diamond industry in the United States said, listen, if the United States is not in this, we will not be able to buy diamonds. We will not be able to buy rough diamonds from anywhere. Nobody will sell to us. So obviously the United States had to be in. He changed his mind in 15 minutes once he understood it. So it's voluntary but not voluntary. You have to be in it if you have any kind of diamond industry. There were a few things missing in the basic agreement, but it went forward starting in January 2003. Went pretty well for a couple of years, and then things started to go wrong. First thing that went wrong was Venezuela. Venezuela simply dropped off the map. Venezuela is not a big diamond producer, but respectable diamond industry. I think it's about $100 million a year worth of rough diamonds come out of Venezuela. It just dropped off the radar. It was not issuing any certificates. It was not submitting its trade or production data. This is part of the obligation, if you remember. We at Partnership Africa Canada sent a team to Venezuela to find out what was going on. Diamonds were being mined. Diamonds were being exported. They were all being smuggled out of the country. The government of Venezuela had lost interest in diamonds. For them, it was a small business. Oil was everything for Venezuela. I think their management of diamonds was just incompetent, and they had lost interest. I don't think it was crooked what was going on, but it was not government. There was no government collusion in it. When we raised this at the Kimberley process and showed the evidence, the government of Venezuela got very angry about the whole thing and said that NGOs should not meddle in their constitutional affairs and all the rest of it. They said that they would stop diamond mining, they would rejig their rules, they would fix everything up, and then they would come back as a full-fledged member of the Kimberley process. We had demanded that they be suspended or even kicked out. Other members said no, they wouldn't agree. They'd given the benefit of the doubt. What the Kimberley process was doing was actually, this is a regulatory system that is designed to stop diamond smuggling. In the case of Venezuela, it gave Venezuela a pass. It actually corroborated, what's the word I'm looking for? It collaborated, it condoned diamond smuggling. It's supposed to stop diamond smuggling, and it condoned it because it continued in Venezuela. We went back, reporters from the BBC and elsewhere have been back, nothing has changed. No diamonds officially are being mined or exported from Venezuela, but it's wide open. Then came Zimbabwe. And I enjoyed the discussion on human rights in the last session, but I have to tell you, if you were a member of the Kimberley process, it would sound like a debate about how many angels could dance on the head of a pin. When diamonds were discovered at Marange in Zimbabwe in 2006, there was a huge rush. Tens of thousands of people rushed into the area because these are alluvial diamonds very close to the surface, easy to mine. People are desperately poor, and they want they want to see if they can not just get rich quick. It's not about getting rich quick. It's about just making a little bit of money. There were 1.5 million artisanal diamond diggers in Africa. On average, they earn about $1 a day. It's a horrible business. The Zimbabwean government, here was a goose that would lay a golden egg for Zimbabwe in its toughest moment, and they didn't want these people stealing their diamonds. So they sent in the Zimbabwean Air Force and basically shot the place up. 200 people were killed. There were beatings, there was rapes, there were jailings. Same thing had happened in Angola not long before that. The NGOs have been pushing for human rights inclusion in the definition of a conflict diamond. The Kimberley process doesn't want to hear about it. They absolutely refuse to change the definition of what a conflict diamond is. A conflict diamond is one that is stolen by a rebel army to try and overthrow a legitimate government. You can have as many discussions as you want about violence around diamonds. Surely this thing was created to stop violence around the diamond industry. Surely the diamond industry understands that and would agree. Well, yes, you can get quite a bit of agreement in the Kimberley process on this and from the diamond industry, but the Kimberley process works on consensus. All decisions are made on the basis of consensus. And if one country disagrees, then nothing will happen. So Venezuela disagreed that it should be kicked out. Zimbabwe disagreed that it should be kicked out, and it also disagreed that human rights should be added to the definition. So here we've got a very powerful instrument. We've got 70 countries agreeing to this. It's based on national laws. You don't have to worry about international laws. It's based on the national laws of each country. Canada passed a Clean Diamond Act, and so did the United States. And so did China and Russia and South Africa and every other country that's in there. It's all based on national laws that they have to enforce themselves. Very powerful. And yet, when it comes to dealing with non-compliance, they can't make it bite. It's got teeth, but they just can't make it bite. They've had all kinds of studies done to show that these countries and others are. I just have to tell you one more story. I've got the out of time signal already, but Guinea is a reasonable diamond producing country, and a lot of Guinean diamonds, a hefty proportion of them these days, are going to Lebanon. Lebanon said it wanted to join the Kimberley process they had a jewelry industry, and they were going to cut and polish diamonds. In fact, a lot of rough diamonds go from Guinea into Lebanon, and then rough diamonds leave Lebanon. The diamonds that go in from Guinea are industrial diamonds. They're worth mostly $10, $20 a carat. The miracle diamonds that come out of Lebanon are gem quality. They go out at $100, $200, $300 a carat. It's a miracle. I don't know what they do to treat these diamonds, but there's something really special going on. This is transfer pricing at its worst and most obvious, and a lot of it is coming out of a country where Hezbollah has got a pretty firm grip on some aspects of it. So let me conclude by saying that it's very important in working on these things. I mean, aspirations are one thing. Getting down to the brass tacks is another, and making these agreements work and following up on them is absolutely essential. I thought when we got the Kimberley process in place in 2003, the role for watchdogging, for NGOs watchdogging it, would probably be over in 2 or 3 years. And in fact, most of the NGOs that were involved in getting the Kimberley process left after a year or two thinking they had won the war. They'd won a battle, but in fact, I think they lost the war. And the jury is still out on whether diamonds will be controlled or properly regulated under the Kimberley process, or whether some other thing will have to happen. I know for one thing that the United States and some other countries will not allow the diamond industry to go back to where it was in the 1990s. You just can't have $8 billion worth of rough diamonds that are turned into $60 or $80 billion a year worth of jewelry. You just can't have that amount of goods sloshing around in the world's money laundering system. It just isn't going to happen. Every $10,000 has to be logged now. So if the Kimberley process won't do this, it'll be the Financial Action Task Force or something else that the diamond industry might not like as much. is the Kimberley process. Thanks.